Because it does not exist. Not because no one wrote it down, but because for nearly 17 centuries, the most powerful religious institution on earth decided there is a version of Jesus Christ that Western civilization has never seen. Not ready for it. And while Rome was busy deciding what you could and could not believe, a small Christian nation in the mountains of East Africa quietly kept every single word. That nation is Ethiopia. And right now, a filmmaker named Mel Gibson is about to show the world what Ethiopia never forgot. In 2004, Mel Gibson released The Passion of the Christ, a film shot entirely in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, depicting the final 12 hours of Jesus' life with a level of unflinching detail that Hollywood had never dared attempt. No softening, no Hollywood compromise. The scourging, the crown of thorns, the weight of the cross on a broken body dragging through Jerusalem's streets. Audiences walked out of theaters in silence. Some wept openly. Critics called it excessive. The faithful called it the most honest portrayal of Christ's suffering ever committed to film. On a production budget that major studios would consider modest, it earned more than $600 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing R-rated film in American cinema history for nearly 2 decades. But Gibson himself has said repeatedly, in interviews spanning more than 20 years, that The Passion was only half the story. The sequel has haunted him ever since. He has described it publicly as the project he could not walk away from, even when Hollywood tried to shut him out entirely. Now it has a title, The Resurrection of the Christ, a confirmed distributor in Lionsgate, a reported budget of $100 million, and active production underway at Cinecittà Studios in Rome. It will be released in 2 parts. Part 1 on Good Friday 2027, Part 2 40 days later on Ascension Day. In a 2022 interview with the National Catholic Register, Gibson revealed that the film would not follow a conventional linear storyline. It would move through time, through events, and through realms of existence that Western religious cinema has never attempted to portray. He said that to tell the resurrection story properly, you had to begin with the fall of the angels. You had to go, in his words, somewhere else altogether, another realm entirely. Then, on the Joe Rogan Experience, he went further. He said he was developing 2 separate scripts, one traditional, one that he described as being more like an acid trip. His exact description of what the film would explore. You're going into other realms. You're in hell. You're watching the angels fall. What Gibson may not have said publicly, but what scholars of ancient scripture have been saying for years, is that this exact vision was already written down nearly 2,000 years ago. Not by a filmmaker, not by a modern theologian, by monks living in cliff-carved monasteries in the Tigray Mountains of northern Ethiopia. And what those monks preserved is unlike anything the Western world has ever been allowed to read. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church traces its origins to the 4th century AD, when King Ezana of Aksum converted to Christianity, making Ethiopia one of the earliest Christian nations in recorded history, older than the Christianization of most of Europe. The scriptures of this church were written and preserved in Guizi, an ancient sacred language that became the foundation of Ethiopian Christian literature centuries before Latin rose to dominance in the West. When Islamic expansion swept across North Africa in the 7th century, Ethiopia became something extraordinary. A Christian civilization cut off from Mediterranean politics, shielded by mountain ranges and desert borders, unreachable by the councils and decrees that were reshaping Christian doctrine elsewhere. That isolation, which many historians have described as geographical misfortune, turned out to be the most important act of preservation in the history of the faith. Ethiopia never sent delegates to the councils, where Western church leaders voted on which books belonged in the Bible and which ones were too dangerous for ordinary people. Ethiopia never received the orders to destroy certain texts. Ethiopia never participated in the theological purges of the 4th and 5th centuries. The monks in those cliff-faced monasteries, reachable only by rope and sheer physical endurance, simply kept copying, generation after generation, century after century, sitting in stone rooms lit by oil lamps, grinding mineral pigments for ink, preparing animal skin parchment, shaping each character of the Guizi script with hands that cramped and backs that bent. Some manuscripts took years to complete. The labor was extraordinary. They did it because they believed, completely and without question, that what they were preserving was sacred truth, not forbidden literature, not dangerous ideas, but divine revelation in its original and unaltered form. The result is a Bible unlike anything found anywhere else on earth. The Ethiopian Bible contains up to 88 books. The Protestant Bible contains 66. The Catholic Bible contains 73. That gap is not a footnote. It represents entire texts: the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Ascension of Isaiah, the Shepherd of Hermas, the first and second books of Maccabean. Writings that early Christians throughout the ancient world read, quoted, and treated as authoritative scripture, until powerful men sitting in council chambers decided they were too dangerous for ordinary believers to access. The Book of Enoch is perhaps the most significant of these suppressed texts. Scholars believe it was written as early as the 3rd century BCE, making it centuries older than the New Testament. For most of Western history, ordinary Christians were never allowed to read it. But Ethiopian monks preserved it in its entirety, and what it contains is nothing short of staggering. Chapter 46 of 1st Enoch describes a divine figure at the center of a heavenly court. His hair is white like wool. His face radiates a grace that mirrors the holy angels surrounding him. Rivers of fire flow around him. Angels collapse to their knees. The wicked are condemned. At the center of it all stands a being of blazing, boundless authority, referred to as the Son of Man, the Chosen One, the righteous judge, presiding over the fate of every soul in creation. Now open the New Testament to the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 14. Written by John of Patmos around 95 AD, centuries after Enoch. The physical description is almost identical. Hair white as wool, eyes like blazing fire, feet like polished bronze refined in a furnace, a voice like the sound of rushing waters, a face blazing with the full intensity of the sun. Both texts describe a sword of authoritative judgment issuing from the figure's mouth. Both portray a cosmic being of overwhelming, terrifying divine power. The late Dr. George Nicholsburg of the University of Iowa, whose decades of scholarship produced what became the definitive English commentary on 1st Enoch, argued that the parallels between Enoch and Revelation are not accidental. The author of Revelation was drawing directly from the Enochic tradition, not creating something new, but echoing a vision that was already ancient. This conclusion is reinforced by the fact that the Epistle of Jude, which sits inside the Standard Western Bible, directly quotes the book of Enoch almost word for word in verses 14 and 15, treating it as authoritative prophetic scripture. The early church knew Enoch. Tertullian quoted it. Irenaeus engaged with it. The authors of the New Testament were immersed in it. Scholars of the Second Temple period confirm it was not a fringe text. It was part of the mainstream religious world from which Christianity emerged. And then, in 363 AD, the Council of Laodicea formally rejected it. Copies were ordered destroyed. The text was declared too dangerous for ordinary believers. The question any honest historian has to ask is, dangerous to whom? And the answer, when you read what Enoch actually says, is uncomfortable. Dangerous to power. Dangerous to any institution that depends on ordinary people believing they need an approved intermediary to reach God. In the Western artistic tradition, the image of Jesus that most people carry through life is gentle, pale, serene. The good shepherd with soft eyes and flowing hair. The humble teacher who feeds the hungry and comforts the grieving. And those qualities are genuinely present in the gospel accounts. No serious scholar disputes them. But the Ethiopian scriptures contain something underneath that familiar portrait, something vast, something that the Western tradition spent centuries methodically softening, revising, and in some cases erasing entirely. In the Ethiopian texts, Christ is not primarily comforting. He is first and foremost overwhelming. His hair blazes with the brilliance of white-hot light. His eyes burn like fire held inside crystal. His face radiates a luminosity that surpasses the sun, and yet within that same blinding light there is infinite peace. His voice does not simply speak. It resonates across multiple realms simultaneously, commanding obedience from angels and demons and the physical laws of creation itself. Around him, time moves differently. Space bends. Reality itself responds to his presence as though it was built by his word, which according to these texts, it was. This is not metaphor in the Ethiopian Christian tradition. This is not poetic exaggeration written to impress a reading audience. This is the original portrait of Christ, a being of absolute cosmic authority who chose, deliberately and at enormous sacrifice, to compress that limitless divine power into the body of a human infant in a manger in Bethlehem. The Ascension of Isaiah, a text preserved in the Ethiopian canon, dated by scholars to the late 1st or early 2nd century AD, contemporary with portions of the New Testament itself, describes this compression in extraordinary detail. It takes the prophet Isaiah on a structured journey through 7 distinct levels of heaven. Each level is more glorious than the last. Each has its own beings, its own laws, its own proximity to the divine. In the 6th heaven, Isaiah collapses entirely. The splendor is more than a human body can physically endure. And yet even that 6th heaven is only a pale reflection of the 7th, where the beloved one, Christ, exists in his full and unrestrained glory. The text then describes what happens as Christ begins his descent toward earth. At each level of heaven, he does not simply pass through. He deliberately veils himself. He appears to the beings of the 6th heaven as one of the 6th order, to those of the 5th as one of the 5th. His brilliance does not fade. His power is not diminishing. He is choosing, layer by layer, to restrain it. The infinite is wrapping itself in limitation. By the time he arrives on earth as a human child, even the lowest angels see nothing remarkable. They are completely unaware of the cosmic magnitude hidden within that small, fragile body. When Gibson told Joe Rogan that his film would show Christ moving through other realms, watching angels fall, descending into hell, the Ascension of Isaiah had already mapped that exact journey nearly 2,000 years earlier. Today, in Ethiopian Orthodox churches, Christ is known as Exaiaber, Lord of the universe. He is depicted in the tradition's ancient iconographic style with dark skin and penetrating eyes surrounded by radiant gold. His icons do not present a soft pastoral figure. They present a being of majestic authority who also, in his majesty, reaches toward the human with boundless compassion, awe, and tenderness simultaneously, the cosmic and the intimate held together without resolution, because in the Ethiopian tradition, that tension is not a contradiction to be resolved. It is the truth.